Hey guys, welcome back to American Adventure. Today's episode I'll be building a river rapids for the Great Frontier section of the park. So this river rapids is going to be themed around logging and Paul Bunyan in a loose way. Yeah, the theming's kind of loose on Paul Bunyan. I might have to rework that later because I was going to build some type of prop of Paul Bunyan or a statue, but that hasn't been made at all. But it's kind of loosely based off of Paul Bunyan. It is called Paul Bunyan's River Adventure. It does work for the ride, but I think I'm missing some actual key things about it, so probably will be an addition later. But right now I'm just gonna talk about the design of the layout and the design of the theming that I went around it. This is like my first legit. Well, it's not my first time I've played with the River Rapids. It's like my third, fourth time kind of messing around with how it's designed and how it kind of flows together. Because I built a couple River Rapids for I think some of the campaign maps. I was kind of just messing around, experimenting with it when Taste of Adventure came out. And so I'm just kind of figuring out how to make this River Rapids as realistic as possible. Because I only have a few river rapids in my area. That would be Grizzly River Run and Calico River Rapids at Knott's and Disney's Calico Adventure. So I have two that I pulled mostly the inspiration off of, was mostly Grizzly and a little bit from Calico River. So it kind of resembles a lot of Grizzly. You'll notice some key features and some key track layout in some way. This was a difficult one to kind of implement because I didn't have any reference area where to kind of put. I kind of made a kind of blank area of where the dead grass is kind of the technique of kind of building the ride. If you also notice that there's this black lining with the terrain editor, I kind of made a mock layout with the terrain editor I kind of just drew. That's actually a really cool way to kind of get started on something like that. I kind of just drew some type of layout, and I kind of followed it pretty closely. I kind of changed the end of the ride a little bit later. You'll see that later on. I'll explain how that one worked. And yeah, so to my understanding, River Rapids have this interesting feature where most of them go downhill, or like a downhill grade, because you want the rapids to speed up. The water needs to speed up to go over the bumps and the troughs to then make the rapids. So I'm kind of following that philosophy here in this ride, even though Parkitect doesn't need that. Parkitect only has just, river rapids. They just do the thing. Here is a building that was later removed because I felt like it was too close and cluttered to the track. I wanted a more forest open area. Most of this ride is very foresty. Not a lot of buildings, more rock work and forest was kind of the objective. And it was a different way to have a different environment translate from one area to the next, even though this is still part of the same western land area, so that does change. Here is plannings of the station platform. Station was kind of wonky. I didn't want to make it too big of a building, because when you build buildings in Parkitect that are quite large, it kind of looks off-putting, or they just kind of look just too uniformed. So the technique was to build two different rectangled buildings next to each other. It was a 2x3 and a 2x3, and then they're kind of put next to each other, and then they kind of merge. But they're still, I'm trying to suggest that they're two different set of buildings. They're not like one. But even though they are just one building. So it's kind of a weird technique, or not a weird technique, it's just a technique to make buildings kind of chop up instead of being one large rectangle. So yeah, making a rectangle as your base, and then adding a square outcrop on one of the sides of the building makes it look different, makes it unique and not uniformed, which is kind of what you want to go for a theme park in a way. Things are kind of organic in shape. Nothing's uniformed. Unless you're trying to go for a uniform type of feel, like some type of space area, or some type of I don't know, what's uniform? Jails? Houses? Jail building? Yeah, jails are kind of uniformed. But this is like a logging facility. I kind of want to make it not uniform. As I ramble about rectangles, I added the technique of making it look like a turntable for the loading platform. I think this is a cool technique to do. I saw CoasterBee do this, and it's a really cool way to kind of make it look more realistic. Because most river rapids that I know, well, yeah, no, Calico River Rapids and Grizzly have a turntable platform. So the boats are constantly moving, and then you load on a moving platform, and you get in the raft, and the raft goes off to the rest of the ride. So kind of was kind of imitating here. It works out actually really well. Actually, it's a way to kind of conform the station. You don't have to make the station so long either. It's kind of just kind of crunched in one little area, which is actually really nice. It's actually a way to save space in a way. So I'm just gonna do some roofing and some awnings for the loading platform, kind of hide the entrance and exit, kind of trying to make the platform look unified and kind of part of a turntable. Nothing moves, but trying to make that impression it does. This building station kind of went through a couple different iterations. Coloring also changed a couple times, and toward like the end of its build, I kind of changed it to make it more of a sawmill, because it is about logs and Paul Bunyan and all that cool stuff. So I have to make more logging like machinery or references for this to make it work. And I do like that most of the build actually ended up pretty close to some of the reference pictures that I had, because the original plan for like American Adventure, or for Disney's America, for their River Rapids was a Lewis and Clark expedition. I wasn't gonna do that because it didn't feel like there was enough info and references to pull from to kind of do it properly. There's just wasn't enough to pull from, so I kind of just went off to a very generic kind of log ride, but that's something that actually works for my park in general, because this is like one of the other bigger rides in the park. Because right now I think the mine train is the biggest ride. This is like the second biggest in its footprint, and same thing with like Dogfight, the inverted coasters, kind of has a big blueprint. But that's kind of the point, because these are e-ticket attractions, so they have some grand space, grand theming, and then yeah, that's kind of how this works. It's kind of how what Disney does with their parks. They kind of have these big rides in lands as your like centerpiece, and then kind of goes there. But Great Frontier has two, so I'm kind of making this land really like grand in a weird way, but yeah, it works. I think it works. I like it. Over here is just some logs in the water to suggest that the logs have been just cut and they're being sent over to the sawmill to be brought up to the sawmill to be cut into planks, and then planks are then delivered to other towns, other places, to be used as furniture, buildings, whatever you want to call it. So this is where construction anarchy really comes in handy, because that roof and that trough is off, is not centered on grid, it's kind of off. And then did some chimneys to suggest that there's a machine that's a steam engine of some sort that's powered by either coal or probably wood. They probably would do that. I don't know. Didn't really look into sawmills in the 1800s. I don't know what exactly they would have done, but something of that nature. Just making sure that, I don't know, terrain and things are hidden properly for some of the places of the station to make it more, I don't know, together, and not really like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's kind of just trying to make sure that everything is cohesive in its theming and everything kind of matches. This is where I went a little crazy with the roofing, because I felt, again, with Parkitect's roofing system, they have not a lot of textures on them, especially if I'm doing this vanilla, so I decided to do some shapes at 0.10, copy it, blueprint it, and did some of these little wooden slats across the entire roof, and I think that was a cool way to go. Took a while for the first section, and then I just blueprinted it a couple times, and then went from there. I kind of like the texture look of it, even though it's a lot of pieces. It's a lot. I mean, at this point, this map is so full that it takes a good 3 to 4 minutes to load the map in. now. It takes a while, so I might come to this point where I might have to build things off-site in another map and then blueprint them in. But I'm not like dire needs where I'm losing FPS like crazy, but I get little hitches here and there, but it's not bad yet. I'm expecting to get bad after I finish the Coney Island section and the industry area. So maybe it will get worse. I'm not sure yet. There's still also a water park idea that has to be built too. That's in the front area of the map, which is kind of just left empty right now. It was going to be a parking lot, but I felt like doing parking lots is kind of boring now, so I wanted to do something a little different. So a New Orleans themed water park will probably happen in the future after the park is probably finished first. So as you see here, the layout got an extension because I felt like the ride was too short, and I wanted to do more like mountain range stuff with the ride in the back to kind of help with the flow of like the mountain range changing. And I wanted to keep it more flat range because it's not desert. This is more like a foresty area where you have pine trees and oak trees and like just more forest and more mountainy. So I kind of forced it to go up another chain lift. So this is a unique thing of making my river rapids have 2 chain lifts instead of 1. I also want to make sure that the chain lift was not at the end of the ride, because I felt like that was a weird way to kind of end the ride where you're all excited that, oh yeah, I got in, did all these cool river rapids and waterfalls and stuff, and then all of a sudden a chain lift is bringing you back up to the station. I feel like that's just a little boring to be your finisher, so I kind of made sure that the chain lift was way in the back here as a second way of having a break in your ride. So your first break would be the first chain lift or your actual beginning, and you have this river rapids through the entire wilderness, going through a tunnel with a waterfall, passing another waterfall, and then you kind of just chill out at the bottom of the second chain lift, and then have a relaxing time going up this well-decorated chain lift, and then going down more river rapids, interacting with the other layouts of the ride, and then going through another tunnel, and then doing the final drop at the end. You'll see later. That was kind of my philosophy of it. Like there's what's the word? It's like a pacing. There's a pacing to the ride, and I didn't realize that was such a big thing in like ride design. So it is a cool thing to think about. You have to think about pacing of where the ride starts, what happens in the middle. It's like a story, so you need your beginning, middle, and end. So the River Rapids kind of has that philosophy with it. I probably could have worked a little bit harder on trying to do that better, but this is also my first like big theme park. This project's just taking way longer than Astroland did ever. Because right now I'm maybe more than a year in, and I'm like, I want to say 57% done, because there's still so much more to do, like more backstage, 2 more lands. Actually, it's more like 3 more lands, because Ellis Island is kind of like a subland of the industrial area, but that has to be built near the water. And I still haven't thought, oh, this things are constantly evolving anyway. Like the last 2 areas, the last 3 areas you want to call it, are constantly evolving because of how like the time periods I've picked and the theming that I can actually pull off. I mean, some of it's also out of my comfort zone, like the Bountiful Valley Farms or the Bountiful Farms was out of my comfort zone. Like theming a theme park around farms, how boring is that? And I was trying to make sure that was not boring. My strong suits are probably, you've seen before in recent projects of mine, sci-fi and western are my strong suits. I love doing those theming. But then doing like a Coney Island theming to this industrial area that will be later on, it's going to be a more tougher thing to work with. And I'm excited and scared at the same time to work on those areas. But right now, I get to work with River Rapids, and it's actually been a very fun project to work with, especially with all the different rock works and stuff like that. I should have talked about the tone of the color of the rock that I've picked. Instead of like a gray stone like that usually everybody picks, I went for like this tannish stain stone to kind of offset the green color of the terrain. I kind of think it works really well with the contrasts of your dark greens and light greens, and then you have this stone that kind of just pops up. It's kind of like it's not like limestone, it's like more like a sandstone. which is kind of weird for this type of foresty area. But again, I'm not like a forest expert. I'm just going for things that kind of look nice and kind of look semi-realistic. But again, most of it was pulled from Grizzly River Run, which is like the main contributor of all inspiration for this ride. Here I wanted to do some prop stuff a little bit, because again, it's not an Astro build without some type of custom prop, machinery, vehicle, creature, whatever you want to call it. So this is just a normal like steam crane that kind of carries the lumber from the second floor of the sawmill and brings it down to the lower levels into a wagon, and then that bundle of wood is sent off to some place to be worked on. The planks of wood are built of tiny shapes. They're built of cube squares at 0.10, the smallest we can go, on grid 10. And they're kind of just stacked on each other. They're actually floating, but from this perspective, it actually works because you have this like suggests that they're actually piled on top each other, and they're just you see the lines, and it kind of works for me, even though technically speaking they are all floating. But I think it works out, especially for this game's camera. So I like it. I like that it suggests that wood comes in and planks come out. So it gives you that imagination of what's going on. So I then box on the cranes, cables, and then this little like tether system around it kind of suggests it's been tethered together. And then there's the box being moved, and then a little steam engine. It's not copying anything. This is just completely winging it off of my imagination, which is okay. Nothing has to be that realistic, but it also has to look semi-realistic. So like something that's half or semi-realistic that you believe would actually work. So I kind of like it. The other details around this place was I added this footpath that kind of just does nothing. It's actually just like a walking path for guests to kind of interact with the ride, or if you're waiting for someone to get off the ride, like mom or dad, or maybe a younger sibling who can't ride it yet because they're not tall enough. They're at the 48-inch requirement. So they wait out here and wait for you to come drop out of the ride. There's a photo shop near the ride's drop. And I think this is what Grizzly River Run does. There's like this nice walking section where you actually walk into forest and you walk underneath the chain lifts. You walk underneath the River Rapids chain lift. That's actually really cool interaction with the path. What I've learned throughout this entire project, which I'm probably going to learn more as I continue to build this place, is that theme parks are really known for their pathways. And if you make a theme park with a really good path interaction with rides and other paths and scenery, it just makes the park more organic and alive in that way. Because pathways is your transit to most places in the park. If you look at how Disneyland's laid out, or Knott's Berry Farm, or Six Flags has a good path layout. It's kind of still kind of all over the place, but every park in the world has a layout that has a nice flow to it. And the flow dictates where your rides are going to be placed, where they're going to be, where your restaurant's going to be, your restrooms. And if you make a poor layout, you'll notice that guests won't like going out to those areas. I don't want to make dead ends. I try not to, but there's some dead ends in my park that I might have to fix later. Or I might be too late to this point where I built so much scenery around those dead ends that it might not work. But I try not to make dead ends. So this is actually trying to prevent the dead end, is that this pathway is from the exit of the back of the land near the Tumbleweeds town. And so the pathway goes up and over the River Rapids into a mine tunnel that goes underneath the first chain lift and then connects back to the main path that's around the Freedom Lake. So that's what I'm trying to accomplish here, but I think it actually works because it's a way to kind of get off the beaten path and relax. Because if you have everything on the main path, you know how much more crowded it gets during like a busy day. Even though I don't think that I don't know if they will correlate really well in the mechanics of this game, but for me being realistic, that's kind of what I'm going for. This way of having a path for people to kind of just escape from. Before this goes away, this is the end of the ride with the passover that's going to be made out of logs. These are not logs, these are the medieval pillars, pillared wood. And I'll probably show you some details about this area later because I didn't film this on the time lapse because I kind of got lazy and did some other things off camera. You can see here I already finished it. But I was kind of just not having a good day recording, if you understand what that means. Like, I was just kind of like and I don't want to record it because recording has this pressure of like, you have to kind of work on it quickly a little bit because you don't want to make so much of like footage, because footage just takes up a lot of hard drive. But regardless, this little experiment over here actually was a inspiration from Grizzly River Run. There's a section where there's a river rapids that's actually highly elevated up toward the end of the ride, but it's like up on the mountain. And there's a section where there's logs and rocks kind of protruding, kind of preventing the boats from falling over another waterfall. And this waterfall connects to a lower section of the ride. I always found that area pretty cool because there's a path interaction with it at Cover Adventure. So I kind of imitated it here with the new water pieces that we got from Booms and Blooms. That was the free update that came included. And then I did some logs, kind of just made them like they're jammed in there, kind of stuck. And then I did a whole bunch of splash effects to kind of give it that imitation that is flowing into the next trough. I really like this interaction between these two because you can, if you can imagine being on the river rapids at the bottom, you can probably see ones at the top. So it gives that thing like, oh wow, look, we're going to go there later. Kind of a suggestion or foreshadowing. It's like a nice way to do that for a ride, is to do foreshadowing stuff. So that's kind of was the objective here. So yeah, I think it looks really nice. I like this area the best, actually. The more of the ride as you go into it, it gets more forest-like. There's less buildings, there's more trees and rocks, and I think that actually works out really well, especially for a river rapids that you don't see that from the path. So that's kind of what I did. Now here I did some research on how river rapids work and how they actually operate in our world. So Grizzly River Run has this prime example of a river rapids needs a storage area for water when they want to drain it for maintenance. So the water needs to go somewhere, because the water doesn't just go back into the city or something, or goes out to the world. The water has to stay within the facility of the park. So there's usually, if you look on Google Maps of any river rapids, like Grizzly, Knott's Berry Farms one, some other ones around the world, they all have this waiting pool of water behind the ride somewhere that they put all the water in, save it for after maintenance done, and then pump it back into the rest of the layout. So this is kind of the objective here, was to build that thing. What I didn't show you on this was the waiting pool that I made for maintenance for river rapids, or the rapids themselves. I will show you in the live tour. There's a lot of little details that I added on this entire place. I mean, this whole build was, I want to say, 12, 15 hour build, maybe? It was a long time. I mean, long enough to the point where I had almost 8 hours of footage, I think. And a lot of it was just staring at the ride, trying to figure out what goes next. That was kind of also the thing too. But yeah, you can also see there's the waiting pool off to the right. Kind of just saw it for 2 seconds. And then here I'm just doing rock work stuff, kind of making it more organic and more fit together. Again, this is probably the most expensive ride here. Look how many trees there are. So onto some of the backstage stuff. So I did some piping, colored this light blue. I like this light blue kind of color. It kind of works for a type of piping system. So these pipes are going to pump the water from this pool up into the building that will be then released on the top of the basically the waterfall. It's not a waterfall, sorry, it's more like a mountain. And so that will fill the entire ride. There is a section that I don't show here either because I didn't record it. You'll see in the tour, live tour as well, that there's a set of other blue pipes, 4 of them, coming from the other direction from the top left-hand side of the holding pool. Yeah, I'm going to call it a holding pool or storage pool for... Oh no, it's called overflow, I think. Yeah, it's overflow. So this is the overflow. Actually, this overflow here is actually a little too tall. So this is going to be shrunken a little bit, like suggesting that the water's already been input into the ride, and then it has a smaller level holding water just in case of other things they need. Or water does evaporate, so you do lose some of your storage. So they have to constantly refill it from either from the city or from another way of getting water from the local water table. I don't know how you get water for your water rides. I haven't really researched that. I should research that. I wonder how they do it, actually. See, building a theme park in a video game actually gives you more questions of how things work in real life. Like, where do they get the water? do they buy it? Do they get it from the local area? Do they have to truck it in? Depending on where the park is, you don't know. So something like that I probably will research later about water, because in Parkitect we can have water anywhere we want. We can fill entire maps full of water. It's a game. We can do whatever we want. But building it, trying to make it realistic, has these questions that I had never thought to ask before. And now I've asked, so it's actually interesting. So here is a, I don't know what you want to call this, a lumber building, kind of like a building out here to kind of help with the chain lift. I kind of built this building to hide the blue pipes that I'll build later that you won't see, you'll see on the live tour. But I also wanted to make a little homage to the little building that Grizzly River Run has for their main chain lift. Is like this some type of steam powered or water powered chain lift system, so I kind of built that here. But this is actually a building hiding some actual facility stuff for the river rapids, for like pumping out water and pumping in water and things like that. But I wanted to kind of, you know, put my spin on that type of building, because that's kind of what I went for. So you can just see I'm just kind of pre-planning some stuff with some rock work and some detailing of pillars, and there's this awning that sits here. This chain lift used to be widened by the biggest wide you can do for the river rapids, that chain, because I felt like it was just too big and kind of bulky, so I went back to a regular grid space and then went from kind of made it very, very generic. This is maybe like another wading pool for logs. That's kind of what I made it very big down here and kind of a little bit more open, you want to call it? Oh, more open, yeah. But I'm also trying to make sure that more forest will be built around it and kind of hide other offset stuff, because I still have other lands in this area. I have to make this transition between, what's the land that's going to be next to this? It's going to be the Coney Island stuff. I might have to move Coney Island. We will see. Again, things migrate and things change a lot for this land, and it's also kind of the frustrating part about how things kind of build themselves. But I think the Coney Island area is going to be okay, so hopefully it's not like something big and drastic where it won't fit, but I think it will fit. Cross your fingers it fits, because doing transitions between two like opposite themes is probably the hardest thing you can do to yourself, especially when building a theme park with multiple lands. So it's like you go from the weirdest transition in my opinion right now for like any Disney or theme park in general would probably be Frontierland to Star Wars. But they do work together though, because you just make a tunnel, which I feel sometimes is a cop-out for a transition. But that's okay to do that, maybe. Let's see, what other weird transitions? There's a weird one in Adventureland that translates to New Orleans. There's this weird building between a like frontier type of building. Like there was a restaurant, it's called Bella Terrace, and it's like very colonial type of building. But then next to it is like some jungle tribal building, and so there's an in between where there's a building facade that's like 100% fake, has these weird colors. It's like a mixture between African and like colonial English building. There's pictures on the internet of it. I might throw a picture up. It just looks odd, and that's the transition, but you won't notice it because you walk by it. You walk by it so quickly you don't notice it. So that's kind of the objective that I'm trying to do for my park and for the lands that kind of come see around the Freedom Lake. So that's kind of the objective. Yeah, it's just things like that I never thought I would notice in a theme park design thing, but it's a kind of fun exercise to do. I kind of look at transitions between different lands. Some transitions are not as apparent as others. Some are very dull, some are really in your face, but most of the time they're supposed to be not in your face. They're supposed to be very hidden, so that you have this gentle feeling of going into the next land. It's not just abrupt either. That's why I feel like tunnels are probably the best way to go, but they're also the easiest way to go. Versus, let's say, I have a transition between my colonial land to a 1950s airfield. So the transition was a lot of different trees, but the trees started changing from oak and pine to palm trees. So there's a difference in its like area, and it actually worked out really well. But transitions, I can talk about this for hours probably, because they're actually very fascinating to kind of build different themes in one cohesive area. I'm trying to think of what transition I need to do for the farming area to the industrial, because it goes from like a nice clean nature area to a more smoky and grungy place. So I will figure that out when I get to that place, because that's the next land problem I'm going to work on, is the industrial area. And that's already changed a couple times in its naming. It might change one more time. I'll explain what's going to happen there later. Here I'm just finishing up details for like logs and stuff in the water, trees and some random junk and pillars and stuff. Just making sure that this looks cohesive and organic looking. I'm kind of trying to hide the trought's edges and kind of keep it too, because it is a river rapids. I kind of want to keep it as close as possible. I don't know if you want to explain, but yeah, just kind of doing that, filling in some gaps. And the river rapids is pretty done here. There is one more area that I get to work on. I get to work on a log cabin made out of 100% out of shapes and roofs. Also, I was testing out some flowers. Was I testing flowers there? Maybe I was. I don't know. I was just kind of just goofing off. Usually when I'm building, I'm usually in a call with somebody or talking with friends. Kind of just doing random things as I build. These processes take a while. Usually that's what happens. But here I wanted to decorate the chain lift a little bit with these like cross sections of timber. So this just houses lighting for the ride. And I was going to do pipes again too, but I felt like that was just copying whatever it was from the beginning. I do want to remark on this little hut here. This little hut is like a cast member viewing spot for cast members to watch guests in their river rapids, and so they don't stand up. Grizzly River one has it. Calico has it. What's the river rapids in Animal Kingdom? I know that one has a watch out point too. I think all of them have a watch out point to some point to, you know, make sure people don't do stupid things on the river rapids, get up and stuff. So yeah, I built that. This is the log cabin. I just felt like there should have been one more scene in this area that kind of passed, so maybe this is a logger's cabin that's kind of out here. Again, the ride doesn't have Paul Bunyan references in it, because I'm not sure how I would be able to put that in. So I might change the name of this ride, but I like the name too much to the point where I don't. It's complicated. It's actually really complicated. So I'm still gonna call it Paul Bunyan's River Adventure, even though there's really no Paul Bunyan in it, but it has logging, so I don't know if I should call it Logging River Rapids or something. Again, things can change. It's not like been out that it's not accurate to Paul Bunyan, but if I made a statue or something, or an animatronic of some sort, maybe I could. So yeah, this is just me finishing up the log cabin. I will meet you guys like in the next minute or so, maybe even quicker, a couple seconds to the live tour. And I'll show you some close-up details of the things and some of the next prep work for the next area. So I'll meet you over there. Okay, here we are in American Adventure. In front is the completed Paul Bunyan's River Rapids, or River Adventure, which is, here's the little sign down here I made off screen with a safety sign to it. It's kind of a boring sign. I might change it later, but again, I wanted to get this project somewhat finished. I would say I would be like 80 to 95% done with how it feels. I do go back in once in a while and kind of just change some details here and there. But so the ride basically starts here. You walk through your queue line, go into this lovely little building. Little, it's actually quite large. And then here's the area, what it looks like up close, and some of the details that I added. Some lamps that kind of go over it. Here's the pedestrian pathway that kind of interacts with most of the ride. And then here's my lovely little steam crane. And some of the areas that kind of change from this land, like, for example, so if I turn around like this. So the flat ride that was here before stays, doesn't go anywhere. doesn't change anything except for some like proper theming. And then I added this additional building here to kind of open up the back end, because this end was kind of chopped off here, and this was kind of walled off, so I kind of made this more open, more bigger of the town. So the town now feels more bigger as you have these sets of twos. It actually works out really well. Backstage area happened actually at the same time, so a picnic area for cast members. This is a break room, some storage, and some trees to kind of help with the atmosphere back here, because you kind of do see something from here. If you stand here, maybe you might be able to see the tops of those blobby trees. Some work over actually happened over here behind the mine train ride. I did the carpenter, the lumber carpenter area. So these are the facilities that make signs for the park. So this is kind of, they sit out here, and then a transformer was added down at the bottom. That was just a short little, I don't know, maintenance area that I built, kind of to help with some of these areas stuff. But here, let's just pan back down to the river rapids. We're just gonna go, let's go the actual route of the ride. So the ride drops here, goes up the first chain lift with the water spout thing, and then kind of just treks itself through the wilderness and this rockiness and forest. And then here's the log cabin, your first little scene. I do like how the log cabin turned out. And into a tunnel where actually there's a waterfall series here. I didn't want to make the waterfalls apparent, so I kind of hid it inside. Here's the first section of waterfall. Yeah, I did change the color of the waterfall here to kind of match the white water rapids of the ride itself, so kind of was aiming to make sure that they kind of match, and they do. They match really well. Then you venture down over here to the I don't know, you want to call this like engine house of the chain lift? You want to call it? Yeah. And then that you go up the chain lift, then you're at the highest point of the ride, and then go through the section to pass the waterfall again and into a cave. Might have to add some vines here to make it more hidden, maybe. I might do that. And then you venture around over here to another river rapids area, and then into the roundabout, into the final drop, into the actual widened trough. Now this thing I didn't show on time lapse because I was kind of being lazy about recording it, but this is made of fences that are on the normal grid because you can't take fences off of it, and then some pillars and some chocolate bars at the bottom to simulate like brake fins or some type of guidance system for the boats to kind of go through. The boats kind of break through at the end, but I think it works out really well. Let's see if there's another boat coming. Here comes another boat. So you can just kind of watch it. Kind of goes straight when it leaves the falls, but it kind of imitates Grizzly River Run. Yeah, it kind of cuts through, but it's fine. But I like the effect. It kind of looks pretty realistic to that point. And then over here is the maintenance pool for the river rapids, hidden behind a barn, the type of like a system that kind of lowers or you kind of moves the boat into it. And then backstage road, parking area for a truck maybe to move a rapids or a raft, you want to call. Another maintenance building of some sort, storage, another maintenance building that I need to finish. Looks boring, need to fix it. And then here's the overflow, so here's the pipe that would actually pump the water back up to the top, send it out. And then this is the pipe that comes from the yellow building that I built that puts it back into the wading pool. And I think that actually works out really well for its design. I like how this looks. It actually makes it feel realistic. And yeah, this is the... Here, let's pull out, see how much frames I lose. A lot. So we'll just pull out about right here. Yeah, I say this is... River Rapids looks pretty darn good. And actually I think it matches really well with the transition between this oranginess and it kind of transitions to this nice green tone and forest-like, and voila, I think it looks good. Some changings were happening over here. I moved the river boat over a little bit. I need to build some type of building here. I don't know what I want to do, but I know I want this boat here, so I'm figuring this out. Oh, and another cool thing I did off screen too was this transition between two different water pools, and they're two different levels, you notice. I use this bridge as a transition, so I could hide the... Yeah, I can hide the paths, right? Yes, okay. So if I hide the paths away, you can see there's a lip here, and there's two different waters at different points. So because this one's at a higher level This one's at a lower level, so I kind of wanted to make that they feel like they were connected, but to hide this kind of jankiness, you kind of hide it underneath the path. You can see it through the wood slats, but I think it works out really well. This color needs to change, actually. I just realized. Yeah, that matches that wood right here. Okay, cool. The last couple things are to tell you what's happening next. So this bunch of rides is for the Coney Island area. I kind of just threw out rides out here just to kind of figure out what I wanted. And then I kind of worked on what's going to happen over here. So this is supposed to be my industrial area. It was going to be like a New York type of area, but that changed to be more like an industrial town. So I'm calling it Town of Industry. So this is going to be a ride based off of the Model T Ford vehicle, so a Ford factory. And this is going to be like a, maybe I'm going to use the access coaster for this. I'm not 100% in love with it, but I think this is going to be like my Forge Iron ride. So my iron roller coaster that goes through like blast furnaces and stuff. And then a flat ride to kind of go with the whole combination of the ride. And then I think I need to put a food court here. Yeah, I can put the food court here. So let me just mark down food court. So food court here maybe? And just kind of make a messy circle. Yeah, I'll just make a messy circle. Actually no, let's just make it a square. I'm being messy. So yeah, maybe this is where the food court sits. I'm not sure. Maybe that's where it goes. Again, this is pre-planning stage. I'm still going through some stuff. Some other things that I've thought about, like, I feel like this should have a pathway to go around Barnstormer to connect itself this way, but I might not do it because I've already kind of finished this outer wall. Unless I make some type of attraction right here. I don't think I'm going to. Yeah. And then Ellis Island is supposed to be on this piece of land. I might have to cut this out, kind of push it in a little bit, and then build this type of Ellis Island to kind of represent our immigrants coming to America, becoming citizens, all that cool stuff. So I kind of want to put Ellis Island in because America is built on the melting pot system, where we're all from different countries building a great country. So that's kind of the objective here. And then this is supposed to be where Coney Island's going to sit, or some type of boardwalk pier. Again, this area can change a lot, so it's technically speaking 3 areas, but we'll see. So I'm gonna wrap it up here, and I will talk to you guys in the next American Adventure episode. So I'll see you then. Bye.